I just returned from the House chamber where I listened to President Donald Trump's first State of the Union speech, and I thought he did a great job. It was really important, I think, for Americans to hear about so many of the accomplishments that have largely flown under the radar for the last year, including the fact that 2.4 million new American jobs have been created, including the fact that we are at a 45-year low for unemployment claims. The lowest unemployment rate in recorded history for both African American and Hispanic community members. And we're seeing with the tax bill that has passed, the average family of four, the typical family of four earning $75,000 a year, seeing their tax bill cut in half, returning more of your hard-earned dollars back to your pocket. We're seeing rising wages for the first time after much stagnation, and after transitioning from more of a passive strategy in Syria and in other countries in Iraq, where you've seen the ISIS network explode, take off, and develop root, we are now seeing nearly 100% of their presence eliminated in those countries. That is simply by transitioning in the last year from a passive strategy to an active strategy. The bottom line is, what you've seen in the last year in this transition in how to govern, it really has had a major impact on our priorities, on those affecting all Americans, whether it's people looking for jobs, whether it's the creation of new jobs in the United States, stopping this offshoring of employment that we experienced for so many years and bringing manufacturing jobs, bringing plants, bringing companies back to the United States. These are real wins that all Americans should be celebrating. We also talked about the fact that there's now a new accountability within government. We're no longer in a scenario where folks, for example, working at the VA cannot, provide the quality of care that our heroes truly deserve. As a matter of fact, in the last year, we have seen 1,500 VA employees removed from their positions because they were not providing adequate service to our heroes. This is a new era in accountability within the federal government. And I will tell you, it's not going to stop within the VA. We are going to continue transitioning to hold federal employees accountable to their citizens at every agency across our federal government. The president talked about reducing prescription drug costs, something that I've long advocated for, very encouraging to hear our president talk about the need to do that. And I'm encouraged to work in a bipartisan manner with him to make sure that we're not paying multiple times the cost for the same drug as it's purchased in Canada and in other developed nations. That's ridiculous. It cannot be defended, and it's something that we definitely need to be working to fix. The president talked about rebuilding our military. By some measure, our military is at the weakest point ever, or the weakest point since World War II. That's unacceptable. President Reagan talked often about peace through strength. We need to rebuild our military. We need to rebuild our Navy, the ships in our Navy, and ensure that the aircraft that we have can actually fly, that we're not cannibalizing one to save another. We need to have all the proper equipment for our military men and women as they lead the fight to protect our freedoms around the world. Very, very important. The president also talked about infrastructure. He noted $1.5 trillion in federal investment for infrastructure. As I understand, that is over a 10-year period. While I am encouraged, and there's no question in South Louisiana the need for infrastructure investment, whether it's a new bridge crossing the Mississippi River, expanding lanes on I-10 and I-12, upgrading many important roads like LA1, Highway 30, and many, many other important investments in South Louisiana. The reality is, if you look at $1.5 trillion over 10 years, honestly, I'm not sure that's enough. I think something we need to add to his proposal is doing a better job taking an inventory of existing infrastructure investments through our federal government. Right now, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Commerce, Corps of Engineers, FEMA, Department of Transportation, and many other federal agencies make annual investments in infrastructure across our nation. I don't know that anyone has a true accounting on how much money they're spending, on how they're prioritizing dollars, how they're choosing which projects they're going to fund, and if those projects truly advance a federal interest or a federal priority. So I think one of the first things we need to do is get an inventory of those programs, determine which ones are returning dollars or bring a return on investment for your hard-earned taxpayer dollars and which ones don't, and make sure that we funnel or prioritize these dollars on true federal priorities. The president also talked about an immigration proposal. The president's immigration proposal included 4 components. I think that the border security, the chain migration, eliminating chain migration to a large degree, and eliminating the visa lottery program in exchange for more of a merit-based approach makes sense. The president also talked about potentially allowing 1.8 million illegal immigrants, effectively giving them amnesty, those DACA recipients. I will tell you that I really struggle with that proposal. I really struggle with the concept of rewarding illegal behavior. It's important to keep in mind that these are illegal immigrants that came to our country illegally. We certainly want to work with the White House and members of Congress on this, but as proposed, it does give me significant heartburn, as I've heard from many of you that have shared that sentiment from home. So we're going to be continuing to work with the White House and members of Congress to see if we can find ways to revise that proposal in a way that's more fair. And I'll tell you, something that we do on a daily basis is we work with Americans who have family members that are back in other countries, that are foreign nationals in other countries. Some of these folks have been working for years to try and bring their family members into the United States. Their family members are staying back in their home countries, and they're trying to go through the legal immigration process. And the whole concept of coming in and rewarding illegal behavior by granting someone citizenship or a path to citizenship, while we leave those that have been trying to go through the legal immigration process back in their home countries and potentially even giving them a setback, raises strong concern. So I'll say it again, we're going to be working with a number of other interested parties to see if we can find ways to reform that proposal. Look, in summary, I want to say this. I think the speech was a very good speech. I think that it reminded people that America didn't become this great successful nation because of what government did for us. What it did is it reminded us that great people like the Cajun Navy that sacrificed so much and gave themselves without any type of government commission or payments or anything else, just did it because it's the right thing to do for neighbors, the right thing to do for strangers, the right thing to do for fellow Americans. That is how America became the greatest country. By hard work, by commitment, by sacrifice. You know, look, I thought that the greatest line by far in the president's speech is when he said, because Americans are dreamers too. And I remember thinking back to when I was growing up and I had minimum wage jobs, including 3 different jobs at one time, just trying to earn some money and pay my way. Many Americans have those dreams as well. And I think that we need to be empowering our own citizens by getting out of the way, having our government get out of the way of their efforts to achieve that dream. And I think the president really encapsulated that in his speech today. I'll say it again. I thought it was one of the best speeches that I've heard from a president of the State of the Union. Very excited to be here today and looking forward to work with the White House to move forward and implement those proposals.